This episode contains sensitive topics. Discretion is advised.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Lusty Lounge. I am today's host, Puce Planet. Just call me Puce. With, as always, just an alt.
Hello.
And we also today have a guest, Mr. D.
Hello.
That's how you
Today's
got.
episode would
That's how
mostly
you-
be.
All right.
You good, alt?
I was expecting something a bit more.
I don't know what kind of grand eloquence you wanted on the entrance there.
I think you do. Known you
He
long
was
enough,
expecting you to walk
but
in
it's
and
fine.
just slap it on the table.
I mean, that is 100% something D would do. So yeah.
Yeah, but this is, it's an audio recording.
We could hear it.
Hello! I don't know really what you want on that.
I'm just thinking about Silver.
I can
Leaf.
start throwing in my voice mod. I can totally sound like
please
Claptrap.
No, I'm good. Please,
real
please
quick.
don't. Please don't.
Glad we could get that out of the way. So today we will be interviewing D because he is a BDSM guy. He knows his stuff.
I have been involved in the greater community for over 10 years. I used to run a local club. I've taught throughout I guess I would say the greater tri-state area for at least 3 years, 3 or 4 of that, I'd say.
So you definitely at least know your thing a little bit.
Yeah, I've traveled to a number of states. I've hung out with presenters, close personal friendships with people that have taught television shows on the subject, and done some very interesting things in a variety of states with people.
That's a very PG way of explaining yourself.
I've gotten used to it.
You don't have to be PG here, but I also kind of respect not wanting to just name drop things left and right. So fair.
Yeah, that was more of like I respect that.
I did abduction crew stuff in Maryland with people. I then ran an abduction crew thing for a group in Pittsburgh, and spent a lot of time in Pittsburgh. I've taught in Cleveland and Columbus extensively, and back when there were clubs in Akron and Columbus and Canton somewhat, I taught there as well. Quick
question.
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck is an abduction club?
Crew.
I was hoping he'd ask.
So if somebody has a fantasy of being abducted, and then it could be a number of things. It could be as extremely sexual as you want that to be, as extremely non-sexual as you want that to be. I've had pure abduct, abuse, and release situations with people, and then I've had capture, abuse, degrade, group fuck, take her out into the woods, pee on her, and release her. Well, when I'm setting them up by myself, I usually run a Google Doc. I could actually send you my Google Doc.
Do it, you want.
But I have a Google form for this that I send to people, and there's questionnaires. So if I'm running it at an event, then it would be a question of, do you want this to be completely secretive? So do you want somebody else to be finalizing the negotiations for you so that you don't know when and where it's happening? And then there's, if you don't care about that and you just, you're doing it 100% by yourself, or maybe it's just you and me negotiating this on our own, then we would figure it out from there. But if I'm doing a full, what I would say, full resist takedown abduction, then I run it with a 5-person team. So that's one for each limb, and then one that is the head person. And they are that for all extensive purposes. The head person's job is to watch the head, and as they're watching the head, watch for the safety of everybody else as they're doing it, so that you have a spotter to know exactly what's going on around, what we have to watch for, if there's something escaping, etc. And then you have a person for each of the 4 limbs, and their job is to restrain that limb. Usually the way that I'll do this is with those, of course, then working in groups. So your leg people are then trying to bind the legs, and the arm people are trying to bind the arms. So the best way to do that is to go respectively elbows or knees. As soon as you get those points restrained, then you go distal from there. So you go knees, elbows, and then wrist, ankles. And if you want to secure additional points from there, you can if you want to, just for more security. But once you have each of those limbs secured in those 2 points, then that person's done.
I have learned so much in the last 5 minutes, and I have an entirety of college and high school.
See, this is why I like it, because we're gonna all learn stuff.
That's why I asked, like, well, okay, how far do you want me to go? Because I've done some shit. Okay, fine. Then when I was in Maryland, when I was with that abduction crew, I actually ended up talking with this girl later on, because it was like one of her best abductions ever that she has apparently used as the like key reference point for other people as like things to aspire for. But she wanted absolute degradation. And I'm definitely into degradation. And I say degradation because some people will argue whether it's humiliation or degradation. And I prefer to consider it degradation in most situations.
I was going to say those two definitely get intermingled quite a bit.
They do. And I know people, so Chicago is the biggest area for people that are into humiliation play, and some of the people that I spent extensive time around were very big presenters on the subject. In case and there was lots of clown play and clown sex and clown gangbangs.
Are you in the clown group in Facebook too?
Oh yeah, the honk thirst posting group.
Because I'm over here like, this is just a meme. This shit ain't real. And then it popped up for me, and I'm like,
it's real. I just questioned it myself
it's real.
as well.
Don't worry. I mean, you saw my Captain Spaulding, right?
No, because I don't actually pay attention to that group, because now it's just.
Oh no! I mean, like when I did that a couple years ago and posted it on Facebook and everything.
No, I
have a bad. I mean, look at this beard. I have a great Captain Spaulding.
I only joined
creeped 3 months ago. People the fuck out. I got liked on Instagram by one of the actors from Thousand Corpses.
Oh shit.
yeah.
Like, what I'm getting from this is you're a submissive.
That's me. Actually, I'm a switch.
Oh, see, I would have never guessed that.
Well, see, that's the funny thing about processing trauma and then realizing how queer you are.
Fair.
So, yeah, I absolutely spent most of my time just in 100% toppy land, but I don't know. I never quite had the same viewpoints. I've never been like Mr. Sir Domny Dom Toppy Top. And never.
Yeah, you're not one of those doms.
Yeah, and we've always referred to it as the one true way people, and I've never been one of those people at all.
I like that.
And because of that, I actually steered away from a lot of types of play for a long time. Because, power exchange to me does require a certain amount of respect. And, I mean, everybody in the scene, we love to make fun of the 24-year-old master on FetLife, where everybody fuck,
They're just a little
FetLife is a
baby.
goddamn cesspool. But the 24-year-old masters that are out there trying to get everybody and talking about all their experience, and it's not that I don't think those people definitely don't want to get into power exchange, but man, don't throw around the word master unless you're thinking about somebody in like marriage terms.
Oh.
Yeah, like don't throw that term around. Like, you can be somebody's sir, you can be somebody's dominant, but like, I don't know. I've always been in that belief of, if you want to be somebody's master, then that is a whole nother level of ownership.
Yeah,
and a
that's like
whole nother level of
100%.
power exchange. Well, see, it doesn't have to be 100%. That is the thing that I always try and make sure that people don't think. You can always negotiate what is and what isn't, because you should never, ever, ever think that because you are going into even a dungeon, that you have to act like you are this fucking role all the time. My partner now ex-partner, but super, we're besties. That got me into everything. She even said that the first time that she went to a club, she thought it was basically going to be handed off to the next person, and, well, time to blow bang this guy. And what people think happens in clubs is way worse than what happens in clubs 90% of the time. And the other 10 is usually just somebody like me who does something a little bit crazier.
Like?
So when you say club, what do you mean?
Well, all throughout every city, every metropolitan city throughout America, there are some form of BDSM club that you can find, whether you're looking through FetLife groups or you're finding them on, or swingers clubs or something. Because
definitely not a dance club.
Yes, correct. Because all of these swingers groups, even though that they are very different, usually have some bleed over. There's always some bleed over. Different areas of the US have different feelings for sex and kink as well. The Cleveland, Ohio area is very different than most of the world because they're very non-sexual with their kink.
Really? Well,
Yeah!
I can see that. Being in Cleveland a few times, yeah.
Well, actually, it is heavily influenced by the legality of the major club for the longest time, because that was the club that I was a part of for a little bit. Because they were a public club, they tried to follow by a certain kind of a rule set in their guidelines and corporate institution. So they basically couldn't have sex and membership to not be a brothel.
Oh.
Yeah, 'cause there's a lot of rules to like distinguish that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but there's other ways to get around it. So there's another club now in Cleveland besides this one that I'm talking about that has sex allowed and all kinds of stuff. So there's plenty of room for change, but it's more of, because of traditionally that it being that way for so long, it's kind of ingrained in people's heads from that.
All right, so now I have a question I feel like most people would have. Where do you start? How do you find and get into all of this?
Honestly, almost everybody starts with FetLife. So FetLife is Facebook for kink. That's all it is. See,
I don't think there aren't commercials for FetLife, are there?
I feel like if you search, it's the first thing that you run into.
Okay, because I've heard that before, but I just kind of tossed it to the side because I'm like, whatever. But I didn't really think of that as an entry point because memes. So, you know.
I mean, I'll be honest. It is horrid. Like, there are a lot of problems with FetLife organizationally.
It's fair.
I mean, shit. Racial problems and just yeah, like there's been. I mean, you got to understand, like this. The certain viewpoint of conservative leaning individuals extends throughout all social media platforms. Doesn't matter if it's a kink platform.
I see. All right. Well, let's say someone doesn't want to use FetLife. Where would be a good place to start then?
Well, see, that's where it gets difficult. But I think it's important to remember that just like Facebook, you know, just like on Facebook, you're going to have, you know, that one aunt that you don't really want to talk to, but who you sometimes need to talk to try and get information about something. That's FetLife still.
See,
so you can go on there to find the information that you want. I mean, if you're just trying to if you want to find information just to be able to learn skills for this sort of thing, gosh, let me find it here.
Because I had a encounter with a friend, and they were telling me how they like being tied up, and I'm like, man, I don't have the knowledge or the patience for that. Really, I'm also just kind of bad at it, so I wouldn't really be That does not.
Oh well, shoot, for rope.
Well, that's just an example.
The best place for rope is. Let me grab it here. I have it. It's bookmarked. ShibariStudy.com. It's run by an amazing lady by the name of Gorgone. I believe that they are still feminine. I'm assuming gender at this point. They were feminine when I knew them. Well, they were feminine when I knew them. I met them in real life. I don't know. But they are absolutely amazing. Wonderful instructor. It's not only them running things on here. There's also a lot of other things, a lot of other instructors going through things. Wow, they actually have just expanded their consent dojo, and I see my one friend on here. And that's awesome because I love the consent dojo things, because rope, like every aspect of kink, has definitely had its consent issues and had to learn to grow from that. And I have definitely known some people myself where even though there wasn't a larger issue with the person, I myself was just like, whoa, I'm just not okay with the way that person does all of that.
Fair.
Lots of touchy, not a lot of asky.
Okay, got you.
All about that consent.
Yes, 100% about that consent, and some people forget when they're instructing about just reaching in and helping with things, and that they're touching another human being. So, yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah, that's a three-way like consent kind of thing, isn't it? I've never thought about that.
Oh yeah, there's all kinds of stuff like that, and and it's especially, you know, I ran into a lot of female instructors that actually would just go hands in when it came to rope. And this was just in my area that I ran into this, where there was just a couple of them in this group that was very prevalent in the Cleveland area. And she would just hands in on anybody when she was teaching, and we would just be like, "Oh, okay." But there is actually some real consent issues in rope where people like to think that it's okay to put like Hitachis on people. Hitachis, if we're going to the completely vanilla for this, is your wand type vibrator. It's the general term for that because the Hitachi was the kind of the first and best one for that.
You know, I never really realized that had a name. I always I just went with vibrator always. So,
yeah, that's because the best one for years, and I'm talking like within the last 5, I want to say, was actually Hitachi brand, like the people that made fucking VCRs. Hitachi body wand massager was what it was. Like, it had a cord, but that bitch was powerful and it was good. And that was everybody in the seed knows what that is.
Yeah, I would have never known that. See, it shows how vanilla I am.
Yeah, nowadays, like, technology has grown. So now we can finally get that level of vibration on like a detachable, rechargeable model and that sort of thing. Yeah, because after Hitachi was bought out, that actual original corded model became actually hard to find for a while there, and the prices were going up. It was kind of interesting. And then technology finally caught up, so it didn't matter anymore.
That's something that makes me think about it now because I never would have thought about it. How has technology affected the kink scene?
I knew a guy that he was very, very good with predicament play. So predicament play would be like, Saw, but not deadly. So one of the things that he would do, and this is an example of this, and I loved it, and that's why I laugh, and it was the most genius use of it, and I loved it to death. So it was handcuff somebody, okay? So you've got standard just police handcuffs, short little chain running between the manacles. And there's a ring run from the ceiling. So it's a suspension ring. So either for ropes or if you've ever known anybody who did aerial arts, it's just kind of a big metal circle. You can have various other things through it to separate channels, but it's a big metal circle. So he ran a electric fence wire to that ring, and he put it on a time delay oscillator. So it wouldn't be on all the time. And then he would hike up the ring so that he would tell you that you had to stand on just the front balls of your feet. And then hike that ring up so that with your hands above your head, you're not touching the chain on your handcuffs to that O-ring. But the second you let your feet drop, that chain's going to touch that O-ring. And you just leave somebody in that situation. Because maybe when your legs give out and that chain touches that O-ring, maybe you'll be fine. And you know what? Maybe 3 times you are. And you're so thankful. And you pop up and you're great. But then that 4th time when your legs are getting really tired, then the electricity's on. And then your legs buckle.
Then it's definitely on.
Yeah. Because, it's on for the duration until it kicks off on its timer. But yeah, that's a great use of technology. Another, actually a normal, less kinky, but more sexually kinky, I would say, thing that is great for technology is all of the Bluetooth controlled sex toys that are out there. Web camera. Webcam porn. That's what you see all of the webcam porn people with the pink insertable vibrators. Those are all made by the Lovins team, and they make a line of toys for all types of sexual organs there. And not only are people able to do things like what you see on the webcams, but you can also share links with those. So the ability to have remote play with people is possible in that way.
So you just mentioned something that I don't think a lot of people ever like connect the dots with. You
What
said
do you mean?
kink and sexual like as almost two separate terms, and a lot of people probably associate them too closely.
Well, yeah, and that's also what I mean. Where that's why I think that the fact that growing up kind of in the Cleveland kink scene where they are separate in the end did kind of help me, because now when I deal with a lot of people in other areas and a lot of people that have done, kink for years on their own, but not necessarily publicly, especially as I've gotten into more queer people, then there's a lot of discussion of like, yeah, no, there doesn't have to be any sex at all. Like, I'm more than happy to come over and tie somebody and have lab time of tying somebody and doing all of this rope space without anything sexually occurring at all. There doesn't have to be sex and kink in any way. Hell, you can molest somebody for a while, and that doesn't mean that anybody needs to have sex even when it comes to like having a scene.
Yeah,
No genital contact needs to occur ever.
I only just realized that recently that it doesn't have to be sexual. So when I found that out, I was like, seems so bizarre. But now I'm just like, it makes sense.
I am a fucking sadist, though, so understand that I get a lot of endorphin from what I'm doing. So I'm going to be on an endorphin high from everything, regardless of what happens. I'll get my rocks off later off. It's okay.
You sure about that, pal?
9 times out of 10.
What do you mean 9 times out of 10? Why isn't it every time?
Well, I mean, now I guess it would be every time. But before I would say in my life 9 times.
All right, that's fair. And we're back. Sorry about that. I guess Discord disconnected.
How is COVID affecting all of this?
Well, that is actually where all of the technology toys have really gained popularity, like the Lovins toys series. Lovins they mostly got their popularity by cam models. If anybody watches any kind of cam porn, which let's be honest, there's probably most of you, then I'm sure you've seen the little pink, just insertable vibrator with kind of the antenna coming out that pretty much all cam models will use for tips. That's Lovins.
I never associated that with a brand. It's just like that's the thing they use. I never put that together.
Yep. So that's Lovins. They are a remote. It's LOVNSE, I believe. They have their own app and like an entire evolving system for it. There's an entire online community for these toys, and they have both sexual body part type of toys, and all of their toys have at least one way of being controllable, like the pink toy where it's a vibration. A lot of the other toys will have at least 2 ways of being controlled, whether that is another pulse area or movement or something like that. And you can give somebody else a link to directly control them. So there are a lot of places I've seen online where people will do just blind link sharing, where people will just share a link and somebody will effectively blindly get them off, as I've termed it, your electronic glory hole.
Just send the link, go to work, and have some fun.
I mean, or on your break. I mean, as long as somebody was there, it's very possible. But there's also like an entire community that builds basically programs that you can run for your toy that will then control all of those vibration and pulse movement points to help go from there. But that's just one example. I mean, I don't know if I'm sure it did hit a little bit of vanilla news as well, but there was a company that made electronic cock cages that got into a lot of trouble because they didn't secure it.
Yeah, some
They
guy
didn't
supposedly
have
got
web
his
security.
hacked or something. Although that
Yep.
turned out to be BS or something, I guess.
It wasn't. It was BS that it was happening. It was not BS that it could happen, because in the like one case or like handful of cases that it happened, it was actually like a misfire essentially, which made them realize that there was a much bigger problem.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So like that's a perfect example. That is a toy that is able to be used with full internet usage for as long of a distance as possible. Like everybody else, Kinksters are doing online video chats, munches. Oh, I forget. Munches are a thing that apparently is not as familiar as a term with people outside of the scene.
I thought you
Because
said
munches
lunches, and I was
apparently
like,
is the
they
term
eat
that
while they do kink?
No. Well,
no,
no.
exactly. And that's what I forget that.
All right,
Would
so
you
go
like
ahead
to
and explain that.
Sure, yeah. So what a munch is like usually you'll have a group or like sometimes it's the different clubhouses or whatever. They'll have a munch, and what it is it's you go together to a public place. So it can be like a coffee place, it can be like a Denny's, whatever, and you get together and you just talk, but no kink happens. It's basically kind of like it's basically the second step after FetLife, which again is FetLife is kind of terrible. It's like a 90s website that has not evolved. But
Yep.
the munches are where you go to actually like meet in person, and a lot of times that's where you go to find a sponsor. You generally will need, at least in my area in Utah, you will need a sponsor to be able to go to one of these like clubs or different events, because we don't just want everybody willy-nilly coming in. We want to have some sort of vetting process. And so you have to get to know someone, and they have to basically trust you enough to say, okay, yeah, I will give you the address, I'll give you the details, and then that person becomes responsible for them. But yeah, a munch is basically just a gathering to get to know each other and to kind of introduce people, and sometimes just to hang out.
And I think that actually points out something very important too about the scene that I don't think to talk about. Just because in my area and a lot of the clubs that I've gone to, they have actually been registered nonprofits and registered businesses. So
Mhm.
in that situation, they don't have a vetting process. But this is a perfect example where there are different things throughout the country and in different areas. So it's important to remember that people are going to have different experiences, because the vetting process is very, very stereotypical for a private organization, because it is just people having it usually in somebody's home, and they're vetting people to let them literally into their homes and to be safe on that level with them. That you want to be able to control people who you're letting in.
Mhm.
Whereas with the ones that are nonprofits and businesses and everything, they have kind of more of an obligation to let people in the door, especially the nonprofits. They actually can't just not let people in the door unless they're, a banned person or something.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because yeah, when it's the more private thing, like you're becoming liable for anything that's happening there to the people who are
Yes.
there. So like if you're not vetting people, you could let some. The sad reality is like you could accidentally let some sexual abuser or sexual predator in, and like then you become liable for what happens to the people at your party.
That's very true too, because I have seen the clubs that are open
learn about them not having stringent enough background checks and things like that at the time. Back before there was a time when not all kink scenes were using sexual offender registered database searches. They weren't doing that appropriately, and it becomes a huge issue when even though you discover that this person hasn't done anything and you don't know anything about it, but they have a huge bad past, and you realize that you're just discovering it because of the issue of it. How many people haven't you?
So that actually brings up a good question. I'm sure a lot of vanilla people and a lot of people, when they think about kinks, think about, like, especially in your line of work, D, sexual predators and abusers and stuff like that, and only people who are truly sick are into kink. How does the kink community deal with sexual abusers and assaults?
Do you mind if I say something here first, D?
Please go.
Okay. So again, this is from my experience with my area. Honestly, when it comes to dealing with that kind of stuff, it's usually on paper, no exception, like no tolerance. Like, you've done something, you're banned, you're blacklisted from not only like that club, but all the local clubs. But in reality, like, a lot of times it comes down to kind of politics and like, oh, well, these people know this person better, so they're still allowing them at the club. And they say, oh, like, that was a misunderstanding. And so, like, there's still a lot of rape culture, unfortunately, that has played into the BDSM community. Because I know in our area, we've had issues where, like, they're finally starting to get more resolved because of just more people standing up and, like, kind of fighting against it. But, like, we have kind of a general overall community that runs from San Francisco to Utah and like Vegas and stuff. And because of different personal connections with some of the kind of higher ups of this thing, there are people that have been allowed to get away with shit, and we're still like pillars of the community, quote unquote. And it's hard because you have these people in power that are the ones that like making decisions, and so when they're backing these people that have done these bad things, nobody can really do anything about it. So that's the shitty thing about BDSM, is it's not entirely free from the same bullshit as real life. We'd like to think we're better, and we try to be better because we have all this consent stuff, but there are still people in charge of things, and so there still ends up being flaws. So you still have to be very careful yourself and make sure that, like, you are protecting yourself as well as you can. You don't just go in trusting, oh, this place is going to keep me safe. Like, that's ideal. That would be the best thing, is to be like, I'm going to go to this club and, like, I'm going to have a good time, and no matter what happens, I know I'll be fine. That would be perfect. That's not the reality. There are still bad people in the kink community, and we generally do our best to keep them out, but sometimes there are other people with more power and more control that make that hard.
So I'm gonna do my best to make this brief, and you're gonna have to probably cut me off because this is a very, 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 very deep subject for me. I have a very, very educated opinion on this matter as somebody who did run an organization and who did deal with this in every way I could. Everything that you're saying is absolutely the truth. And the flaw is the binary thinking of it. The flaw in the system is thinking that you are either innocent or guilty, and that if you are guilty, you are the worst monster. And the issue is demonizing the word to only the worst extent possible. The problem is
all shades of
exactly
gray when it comes to that.
We have to. Well, no. So I don't want to use all shades of gray. Okay, what I want to say is that a consent violation is a scale. Consent violations do not start and stop at and I'm sorry, I shouldn't even say that word, at hard R. It doesn't start and stop at hard R. People need to face the fact that you should have the same comfort and support coming forward for either side to tell the story. If it's as simple as in a scene you touch somebody's chest and they absolutely did not want that. That doesn't mean you should be banned from a club.
Right.
It absolutely means you need to have something happen. And the issue is we are only judging consent violations by the response to the hard R. We need to be able to respond to it as a scale. And we need to face that
saying
fact.
scale, not gray.
One important thing that I want to point out here is the reason why this is good. The reason why this needs to happen is because, and I've researched into this as well, there is a hard psychological effect to being forced isolated. And in some of these scenes, when it is a negative political situations, somebody will be banned for literally the example I gave you. And because the entire viewpoint of the scene is that if you have a consent violation, then you can't question it, you can't do anything. There's a fear about any level of accusation. And that's why people fight so much to defend each other. And that's why every club ends up as this little circle of people just having each other's back. And if we instead look at this and remove the fear from either side of the equation, then we have transformative justice and we can come together.
Do you guys have I don't know how far spread the Consent Academy is, but do you guys have the Consent Academy out there?
Are you talking about Great Answers Consent Academy?
I'm not sure. It's a group that like they've been going around and they talk about consent violations and like restorative justice and that kind of stuff.
I don't know for sure. That could be the group that was created by Great Answer initially. It could not. That sounds fantastic. If not, I'm not entirely sure. Not that I don't have a problem with Great Answers group either. I don't think that they were. I haven't heard of them doing anything in years. That's actually why I was wondering. But no, that sounds fantastic, and we don't have that here. And that I have been the sole silent voice for about 5 to 6 years ever since I've been educated on this.
Oh wow.
Telling it to every single community leader that I meet, and it's too difficult of a concept for people to understand. And until they can understand kind of the terms that I'm saying here for it, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But we have to be able to stigmatize both fears. You have to have just as much trust in making an accusation as being accused.
So yeah, that's one of the things that we're working on changing out here is that like, kind of starting like it's kind of this weird place because the reality is none of us, like at least in our society, in our like group, sorry, not society, but our group, have the actual training and anything to really deal with it. So, we're doing the best we can because we don't have a panel of like therapists and that to come down and deal with every consent violation. But we're working to basically have these panels now in our community that are like they will take any situation because it can be something where somebody commits a consent violation and like you said like goes and touches somebody and the other person's uncomfortable and that other person's so uncomfortable they're not even comfortable enough to tell the person, and so like this person has no idea they even did something, and it's like it's still a consent violation, still needs to be taken seriously, but like the person who didn't realize they had made that error, like they should not be treated as somebody who has done hard R. So I agree, it is definitely a scale, and that's something that we are trying to work on in our community, and I think that's kind of why some of these higher ups that are like, oh well, this for that, like you took care of me, I'll take care of you, like
exactly
is starting to go away because people are starting to be like, yeah, no, that's not how this is going to play anymore.
And actually the perfect example for that is I don't know if you're involved in the rope community.
Only a little bit. Like we have a branch of Hitchin' Bitches out here, and I know Midori comes out here every now and then, and we have some other big rope people. But
I got you. Every area usually has at least one person. I am actually I came from a predominant rope house for a while.
Mhm.
But my long-standing ex-metamors of mine were very, very skilled shibarists and rigor. And that community, I think, has been the largest like case study for everything we're talking about here. Because there have been so many of these situations predominantly with the instructors from it. I hate to say, like where the old guard was for this. There was a lot of names that
The
had
old
a
guard.
lot of accusations, and it has slowly led to even the people that didn't have accusations now stepping back and going, oh, we need to redo our whole look of this, and now they're not even teaching or instructing, and now there's a whole nother world of up and coming people, and it's actually been, I don't know, I've just been discovering it. One of my ex metamors is friends with half of the new up and coming rope scene, and I love to hear about how much it has changed and how much those people have just quietly even gone away if they didn't have issues. That scene has been able to start healing itself, and I really, really hope that the entire scene as a whole can take inspiration.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
Right?
Because yeah, like one of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize that are like teaching, or again, I don't know if you guys use pillars of the community. It's a term that's used out here, which is kind of a joke because it usually is just like, oh, this person like likes to run events or do things, and so like most of them actually just do it because they want stuff to happen. We do have, of course, the power hungry people that are problematic,
That
but
is an important thing to always remember, because every community, a big thing in kink, especially in old guard, is ego.
Oh yeah, it's fucking ridiculous. Um, but like what a lot of those people refuse to accept, um, or some of the newer ones don't realize, is that with that power and responsibility, like comes the assumed social power, which comes with extra responsibility. I mean, with great power comes great responsibility. And so like if you go and ask somebody, if somebody's like, oh, I know that name, they go to their first party and somebody's been like, oh, hey, I'm blah, blah, blah. And somebody's like, oh, I've heard so much about you. This person says you do this and this. If you all of a sudden ask them to play, they are most likely going to be afraid to say no. And that is a prime example for setting up for a consent violation. Like, so you have to be aware of that kind of, yeah, you've got to be aware of that kind of responsibility.
There's also like, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's the same as any sort of community, and that is a newer person is just going to be excited, and they're not going to know what to say. There is an entire skill set for negotiation. There is an entire, and that is a big thing that I've made sure to teach and instill in everybody that I've ever been around, is you should always have comfort in your negotiation skills, but that takes a lot of time to put together. And somebody like that, they have absolute control of the situation, and until you're willing to face and admit that there is a power dynamic automatically, regardless of which side you're on, you're not facing it honestly.
It was like the first time the Consent Academy came around, and like we had a bunch of people attend, including a lot of these pillars. Like we kind of realized how bad it was, because this one person that I've kind of talked about that like has been allowed to stay in the community as a known sexual predator. Like even during the thing when we were talking about this societal power and everything, he basically was just like, well, I don't think it's fair that like I have to, like I didn't ask for this power. I didn't build myself on the pedestal, so it's not fair that I should have to deal with this extra responsibility. And it's like, okay, like you are just like again pointing out over and over like that you are a problem. So luckily he's mostly being pushed out, but like it's
Good.
The problem is like, again, like I said earlier, you have to be careful yourself, and make sure that you are being careful and don't just put that trust on others. Because I actually help run a group that, like, it's a play group, you know, like we have our parties and stuff. But one of the big things there is that we want to help empower people to feel okay and feel empowered to say no and to have these honest negotiations, because like you said, it takes a while to learn. And also, like, it's not just with females, like, you know, so I'm not going to be like, oh, only females are told they can't say no. Like, it happens with everybody. But societally,
Yes.
it does happen a lot with females in particular, where, like, I grew up Mormon, you know, my whole young childhood was don't inconvenience anyone else. It's like, do whatever you have to make sure no one else is inconvenienced. So I've had to fight against that to learn how to be able to say no, and also to be able to accept a no. That is also extremely important.
So here's an unpopular or maybe just unsaid opinion that it took me years to realize. For 8 years of being in the scene and negotiating, I realized that I was only negotiating what I was allowed to do. That as a top, my input and my emotional state was never even brought into question. That there was never a point in which I was pushing for what I wanted out of things, and that everybody else was just happy to let that happen.
Yeah, tops
And
get
yeah,
underappreciated.
yeah. Well, no, see, I think that's where I realized that that was there, and that it allowed those bad people to do that.
Hmm.
And it is focused on that, because what you're actually saying is, you know, no, please just don't do this. Well,
Hmm.
that's not good. That's not a good way of going about it, because you're just like, you shouldn't only, like, yes, you should tell me your boundaries, but that should not be the only negotiation. It's fine.
Right. Like, what do you actually want? What are you going to enjoy? Like, what are you not going to enjoy? And I will do whatever the fuck I want, which, you know, sometimes works, but like,
Exactly.
but yeah, like, also as the top, like, yeah, oh, you know, like, if somebody's just like, I want you to flog me, and the top's like, sure, I know how to flog, but like, they don't necessarily enjoy it, like, the top's not going to get much out of the scene. And then honestly, the bottom probably won't get much out of it either. Like, the
Exactly.
the best scenes come when both people have that energy and are getting the most out of it.
Yes.
Also, hashtag tops need aftercare too.
Oh my God. So important thing. Again, I do big fucked up play. When I'm doing extreme play, so abductions, interrogations, mental break play, I insist on having aftercare myself. I absolutely insist on it.
That's
So I will
definitely something
fucking
needed for
cry.
both sides.
Yeah, you're
Yes,
like destroying somebody during play, like that takes a
yes.
toll on you too.
Unless you're a
Please,
complete
please tell me
psychopath.
you don't actually think I'm a monster. Please, please, please tell me this. I need that.
See, you may
Yeah.
be a big, strong man, but you are a strong, cuddly bear. Don't worry.
I am.
Yeah, it's tops are, yeah, just underappreciated so much in so many ways.
But
But
it's
yes,
also because we don't
aftercare.
know to advocate for ourselves. That's the
Right.
whole thing. It's just
Right.
it's how it's being taught. It needs to just all transform. And I am very happy to hear that transformative justice is starting to take kind of a push for that. And there's one thing that I actually want to tell you that is a push for pillars of the community that is a part of transformative justice. And it's something that I did for a period of time as well. If you are a pillar of justice, the thing that you should face and do yourself is you need to pick just a couple people, at least two people that are not in a relationship with you, are not connected in that way, that you trust to give you an honest opinion. And you put their name out there so that if anybody does not feel comfortable coming to you with anything that you've done, they can come to them.
I love that, because yeah, again, like with the kind of current setup that we have that is hopefully going away, it's just like, oh, well, you want to go higher? Oh, well, it just so happens the person at the top is the one who, you know, let this happen. So good luck.
Yes, but that's the thing. Doing it this way is also a way to do it even just for yourself. It's a way to even just have personal review. Like, hey, you were kind of a dick. You know, hey, this person came to me. they were really fucking offended by what you said. It doesn't have to even be consent. It can just be being a better person because you are a pillar of community and have an ego and have been doing this for 12 years and have been, whatever. It doesn't matter. Being able to have a trusted group is there for you too.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I love that. Also, the amount of times I've heard I didn't ask to be put on this pillar makes me want to throw up. It's like, oh really? Then you really rode that convincingly.
Yeah, right.
All right, so you mentioned aftercare. Let's move into that part of the conversation. I know at least people like you two are probably veterans and know exactly what aftercare is and how to treat it and stuff. But explain it for the newbies. What is aftercare and when it should be done and how it should be done?
Aftercare should be a negotiated thing, just like every other part of your scene.
Mm-hmm.
I will immediately state that because honestly, there are some people out there that they don't want that aftercare, or maybe this is pickup play and they're not comfortable because they do want to be cuddled and held, and they don't want that from you.
Right.
So it's important to negotiate that because all of this is really just about setting equal expectations. So being able to do that and go through that and know what you're facing at the end of it so that it's not traumatic for either one of you is important.
Yeah,
So aftercare definitely is on a scale as well. What is aftercare?
So aftercare can be anything after a scene that helps to return you to a normal functioning human
Your
being.
baseline.
Yeah.
Yes. It can be as simple as bringing somebody a cup of water and a snack. Or it can be fucking right in the fucking space right there. It could be anything. It's different for every person.
Yeah, like sex, intercourse can be aftercare. Like different people have all sorts of different things. Like a lot of times aftercare is just perceived as just like, oh, okay, yeah, now we're going to take time to cuddle and relax and lay in blankets, and it's like that's not what it is for everyone.
Yes, exactly. And that's why it's important to remember that just like everything else, we need to not try and just compartmentalize everything and put everything by label.
Yeah, and like I fully agree that it should be a part of the original negotiations, because you do get a lot of people that like will have the scene and then all of a sudden they're like aftercare and they're like, oh, I love cuddles, and the other person's like, okay, but I don't cuddle. And so it's like you need to have negotiated that before. So it's like, okay, you need cuddles, well, let's find you someone who is willing to cuddle you after, because that's not something I can provide.
Exactly. And that usually works great. I have definitely been a part of that, where it was, my partner at the time was my first interrogation was me actually learning it from a metamor who was teaching a class on it. And in that situation, it was understood that I was starting the aftercare because they were teaching a class. So even though they were the one leading the scene and doing all of this for this group scene, I was the one leading the aftercare because I was the one that was needed.
So aftercare doesn't have to be just for kinks. It can be for the vanilla couples. It can be for any scene scenario.
It should be.
Yeah.
And also for tops and bottoms.
Yes, because it's reconnecting. It's putting yourself back at your base, like reconnecting if it's somebody that you want to connect with. It's that baseline of just really restoring your mental health. I mean, and being able to bring your endorphins down a little bit so you don't run off and make a mistake being too eager to do something with somebody else. Then
also, another important aspect of aftercare that should be negotiated is like if you're doing a big scene, because like I don't necessarily consider this, and I don't mean this. I don't want to sound like I'm cocky or whatever, but like a lot of what I do, I've had other people relate to me as being edge play, which is different than edging. Not like getting towards an orgasm and stopping, but edge play is like stuff that's more out there, so kind of like D, where it's like some people watch it and are like, what the fuck?
Well, that's the whole thing. Edge play is a relative term, and people forget that. What some people consider edge play will not be what other people consider edge play.
Right. So again, like, yeah, don't ever, when you're doing negotiations, real quick side tangent on that, don't ever assume the other person understands your vocabulary, because different things mean different stuff to different people. But yeah, so like another important part of the aftercare a lot of times can be dealing with drop, which both tops and bottoms can get. And a lot of times, because of all of the stuff that's going on in your body and all of the generally good feelings, or in type 3 play, type 3 fun, like it can be the bad feelings that later become good feelings. A lot of times your body is going to react to that, and it depends on the person. This doesn't always happen, but it'll react often hours later, sometimes days later, but like you will have this emotional drop. And so having these basically like connecting after 24 hours, 48 hours, setting up these check-in points to like check on each other and be like, how are you doing? Like, are you experiencing drop? Like, do you need anything? And so like aftercare does not have a time limit per se, because there are some things where it's like, yeah, if I go do pick up play and somebody's like, okay, I'm going to flog you, like chances are with the way my body works, I'm like, yeah, I don't need aftercare. I'm fine. Like I walk out of it and I'm just like, cool, I'm good. But like if I do one of these big scenes, yeah, like chances are this scene's going to affect me for a week. So there's no set time limit on how long or short aftercare should be.
Depending on the extremity of the scene, I do. Somebody else kind of taught me this system, but I do 1 day, 1 week, 1 month. So I'll follow up
I've
with
heard
you
that
in 1
about a
day,
lot
I'll
of different
follow up.
things. So
Yeah, I mean, well, that's this. The community should be about sharing strategies and sharing information, doing all that.
well, I meant regular life too, but
Yeah, but well, I mean, in project management and everything. Yeah, I always had expectations for following up on situations with people, but being able to do exactly what you're saying is important, because you do not know what's going to come up. And yeah, as the top, it's usually important for me to reach out, because maybe the bottom doesn't feel comfortable reaching out, and starting that conversation gives them a place to do that more.
Sometimes after you've done the scene, like if you don't have somebody who's going to check in on you, you may be experiencing this drop and like your brain is not necessarily connecting, like this is what's going on. And so somebody all of a sudden being like, how are you doing? And you're like, oh shit, like I've just had kind of a shitty, like low day. And it's just like, and this person just checked in on me. Oh yeah, we did that scene. That's probably what's going on.
This is actually a big thing that people in the vanilla world don't necessarily realize, but in the kink scene especially, we refer to things as con drop.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime you go to any kind of convention, you end up with the same ramp up, and usually the same kind of endorphins and stress and all of that. And I mean, with kink conventions, it gets, of course, magnified, because you can effectively be living in a kink mecca for, with our Odyssey events a week, and just be living naked in the woods doing debauchery the whole time. And then you come back to the world and you get mentally health wrecked for a couple days. And that's what we call con drop, because it's just a general catch-all. It's not even associated with one scene or one situation. You may have done no scenes and still have a huge emotional response.
is that what normies refer to as con flu?
No, con flu is different.
No, con flu is people getting colds.
Okay,
Con
totally
flu is
different. Okay.
that, like you're packing so many people together, everybody's gonna get what everybody has. But yeah, con drop is like, you go, and whether you cosplay or not, you're in this huge group of people that all share these same excitements and the same like high energy that you do, and you're in it for like
so it's more
a whole weekend or more, and then it's an energy thing.
As a convention person, we call it post-con depression. Just a general catch-all.
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, we've in the scene, it's con drop, and if you ever hear people in a anime convention scene saying con drop, they're probably kicking.
I mean, I feel like con drop sounds a lot cooler than post-con depression.
Post-con depression sounds more clinical, but
like that just sounds too close to postpartum depression for me. So
yeah, I'm sticking with con drop just because it sounds nicer.
Yeah, I've definitely heard both because like I with my job I travel to a lot of cons and stuff too, so I've definitely heard both, and I agree. Like people who are like con drop usually tend to be the ones who are kinky.
That's why the Venn diagram of people that play Dungeons and Dragons, watch anime, and are into BDSM is usually so.
I was gonna say and ask, especially with like D&D seeming to pop off in the last few years, has that like D&D community become more vanilla and separate from the kink community, or is that bringing even more newbies into the kink community?
I think they've always been kind of separate. Like there is that crossover, but like there's no pressure of like, oh, you play D&D, so you want to come get tied up. You know, it's like it happens for some people, but there are plenty of vanilla people still.
This may come as a surprise, but the same people that like to dress up in leather and go to the medieval fair are the same people who like to dress up in leather and go to the BDSM fair too.
Okay, Ren Fair is different than D&D.
I'm just saying, it's that crossover though. It's those people that want. I mean, it's role playing.
Yeah, it
It's
is. It is.
So I do not at all think that the increase in D&D popularity has led to any sort of increase in BDSM popularity. All that I think that has really
two
occurred in
different
the
circles.
scene.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not that it's two different circles. I think there's still a huge amount of overlap.
Right. Well, that's what I meant. Like the
transparency-
circles themselves are growing, but not in relation to each other.
I think it's actually more related to the increase in polyamory.
Yeah, I would agree.
Because of the
Because
whole more
everybody's-
acceptance movement for that?
It's more of the fact that because people are able to open up their relationships, it's opening up more people to be able to have the experience in a low-stress environment, and a lot of those people are then playing D&D with their poly circle.
Like the amount of
so
jokes
it's-
of like, oh, I need more partners so that I can have a
Yup.
bigger D&D campaign.
It's the joke's there for a reason. I've seen so many
Yep.
people do it. And at the same point in time, I have also seen dungeons do kinky and geeky and kinky groups. So
Mhm.
they'll have board game nights.
And you can find different rule sets and mods and stuff for basically any of the major things like Pathfinder or D&D 5e that include kink or sex or different things like that to make them.
Okay, we don't
you know,
talk about that second ed book.
No, Pathfinder 2.0?
Oh, no. D&D second edition.
Oh, no, 5e.
5e.
No.
Fifth.
If you ever want to go down the rabbit hole, there was a second edition D&D book put out. I don't think it was official. I don't remember,
Oh, okay.
but it had magical STDs. It had
I've heard
magical
of it.
sex toys. I've seen it. It is horrible but funny.
So at the
one
end of the day, what you want to tell the community is, just because your friend plays D&D doesn't necessarily mean they like to also role play in the bedroom.
Right. One thing that is super important, and I think like this hopefully will spread out from polyamory, from the kink community, is like the importance of consent and communication.
Yes.
Communication
Yes.
is so fucking important.
That's
Also,
that's
sorry.
the thing. A lot of communication and a lot of polyamory podcasts and everything do talk about is they've started expanding to say, hey, this isn't just polyamory. This isn't just us. Everybody can use these skills.
Mhm. And open and honest communication, which takes time to be able to do because a lot of things are ingrained in us as children. Society has a lot of bullshit. So it takes time to get there. So don't if you're like, oh, I have a really hard time talking about my feelings or whatever, don't feel bad. Just keep at it, keep working on it. And one thing too that my ADD brain, before I forget it, don't let anyone gatekeep you when it comes to your personal growth or the kink community. If you are just oh, I'm pretty vanilla, but I like being tied up or handcuffed, those things are becoming technically a little more vanilla than they are kinky, but it's still kinky, and you can still be okay, yeah, I'm kinky. Don't let someone be
I call that French vanilla.
yeah.
French vanilla. I like that.
So it's don't let somebody make you feel bad because you're not into it more and you're still but I am kinky, that's kinky for me. Don't let people gatekeep you. D, if I might ask a question, because again, I kind of talked about this not on the recording, but like out my way, we don't really have these abduction groups, and like I was saying, that like is one of my biggest fantasies. So like for me, my ideal fantasy would be getting kidnapped and basically being drugged or somehow black out somewhere random where I don't know what's going to happen, and then wake up in some sort of basement or something where there's no windows, like nothing to tell the time, be chained up, and basically then have different people come and do different sorts of like, physical stuff, physical contact, as well as sexual stuff for an extended amount of time. Like I wouldn't know how long it was, but they never talk, always have masks, so like I wouldn't know who they were, and I wouldn't know if like my life was actually at risk or not, because I do like that brain fuck. Like I want to be completely broken. So have you ever used any sort of like drug or anything to do that, or is it always the person is conscious when you're kidnapping them?
So, funny thing about all of this. I will give a fairly informed answer to this, as the individual that has assisted me in at least once, that is I think a doctorate of chemical engineering, and was very very honest with, yes, I can make chloroform if you really want it, but I absolutely have never and probably will never do anything that is capable of involving anything like that, because there is no safe way of knowing.
Okay.
There's no way of being able to safely administer that. I mean, unless you're having an anesthesiologist in your fucking room, I don't think there's any way you can do it. And I don't even know if they could do it correctly.
Maybe something in the middle there would be cover her head with the sack and like drive her around the block a few times.
So I've done that. One of the camps, I black bagged somebody, threw them in the back of a U-Haul van. If you're wondering why it was a U-Haul van, because U-Haul vans have tie-downs back. we tied them down in the back of a U-Haul van and drove them around for a good 10-15 minutes, which was actually just running in circles, but making sure to hit every hill and turn that we could while doing this, so that it was as disorienting as possible. Took them to another place, tied them up in a room that had been reorganized and rearranged. The only room they hadn't been into in the entire campground. Tied them to a chair, and the bag had one disorienting hole on it, so they could never see for sure what was going on. And the only time the bag was removed, it was to shine a light in their eyes while most of us were masked to disorient them.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna have to talk.
I have lots of mental tricks, because the whole thing about interrogation is you don't do anything that is actually that extreme. It's all about mentally unbalancing somebody. Once you have somebody mentally unbalanced, you can do whatever you want with them. I have abducted and tortured somebody who was an ex-POW.
Oh wow.
Oh wow.
Who had experience with this and very real triggers. And they were very good about their communication and exactly how those triggers could and could not be used, and how they wanted them to and to not be used. And I was able to skirt the line of that trigger and mentally unbalance them in a completely negotiated way. And it worked beautifully for them. But that is the key of negotiation.
Hey, look at that. We negotiated a little bit right here. Top got a little bit of input, the bottom got a little bit of input.
Yeah. One thing that actually made me think of, well, two things. First is like one thing that D has been very clear on, and I want to be very clear on as well, is even with this more extreme play that like we both seem to do, one of the biggest things that's taken into factor is safety. Like you can still do these extreme things and these fucked up things, but like you still have safety measures in place, because at the end of the day, you don't want to actually fuck anybody up mentally or physically for like permanently. Like you've got to be careful. You've got to have these different
Yeah,
measures in
talk about
place.
rack.
Yeah, yeah. And then the other thing that, like, this could be an entire topic on itself, but I do want to mention it, is that there are a lot of people that actually are able to process trauma and grow from, and start to heal using BDSM.
Mm-hmm.
But that, like, I'm not an expert on it, and I don't think there are necessarily any experts yet, because it is like it's kind of like the whole Hitachi thing. It's like, oh, it has to do with sex, so like we can't touch it or we won't get money or funding, and so, like, there are no official scientists or organizations that are researching it. But I know plenty of people that have been able to work through deep-seated trauma with different things they've done in kink.
All right, let's call that a wrap for the day, folks. Just to wrap up, audience, we'd just like to remind everybody after this: treat yourself well, get some nice aftercare, say some good words to yourself, get a hug from your partners. D, any final words for the night?
Communication, open and honestly, is the key to being able to successfully do anything in life with another person. BDSM is no different than any other thing that you would do.
All right, D, thank you very much for letting us interview you on all things kink, especially your extreme hobbies. I hope you had a good time talking to the three of us, whether it be Minka with her veteran knowledge, myself with my baby knowledge, or...
It's been a blast, and I'm always open to talk or delve into subjects more.
I'm sure we'll have you back.
Yeah, maybe we'll have you on for like another discussion a year or so down the road. As
Yeah,
long as the
pick a
podcast's
specific
popular
subject.
enough.
I can go on for a while. Well,
All
everybody
right.
have a great day. I'm going to bounce.
Thank you.
All
D.
right. Thanks for joining us. Have fun at your blind date.
I will. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.